Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on a Wednesday episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're going to be joined by Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, a guy that works at CBS Sports, does the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He knows football just as well as anybody on the national scene. And I want to get his thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, but especially on this young offensive line with Broderick Jones, what he sees in them, and the state of the AFC North. We'll have that full conversation with him here on today's North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, remind you, this podcast is presented by FanDuel and is brought to you by Edgar, Snyder and Associates. When you've been hurt on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment's over? Who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. It's the insurance company's doctors. They won't be on your side. Get someone who is on your side in Edgar, Snyder and Associates. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Now, our interview with Ross Tucker. Hello and welcome to another edition of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. He is not Ray Fittipaldo or Brian Batko. We got a special guest here today. That's Ross Tucker, former NFL lineman. You know him, you love him from the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He's on CBS Sports. He's on Westwood One Sports. This man is here, there, and everywhere talking all things football. Ross Tucker, welcome to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's North Shore Drive podcast.
Chris, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if and when I'll get out on the North Shore this season. Hopefully at some point. I will obviously be in the booth Thursday night for the Bengals and the Steelers, but that will be in Cincinnati. I'm a huge fan of doing games in Pittsburgh for a lot of reasons, one of which is I live in Harrisburg. So it's about a 3-hour drive, which isn't too bad. Plus, I just think it's a beautiful, very cool city. So hopefully I get out there at some point this year. That remains to be seen.
Hey, if you're not out here for a game, you'll probably be here for the NFL draft coming up in April, where everyone's going to be all eyes on the Steelers and what they try to do at the quarterback position with this year's draft class. But I want to talk to you about the Steelers quarterback right now because Aaron Rodgers, you know, you've commented on him throughout the year. He came into this team. He had a lot to prove to show that, hey, the past was the past with the Jets. What has been your early interpretation of as far as how he's handled himself and how he's basically led this Steelers offense with both his temperament and his play on the field?
I would say very favorable. And I give him and Mike Tomlin and offensive coordinator Arthur Smith a ton of credit. You know, I did not care for the fact that Rodgers missed as much of the offseason program as he did. You know, in my mindset, Chris, it was, hey, you know, if you're trying to win, you want those reps. You want to be there with your teammates, getting those reps with DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin and all these guys, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, you know, Freiermuth, you name them. You know, those are valuable reps. And guys I had been around like Tom Brady or whoever would highly value all those reps. But I do think, you know, he hasn't been doing the weekly media appearances, you know, that had gotten so much attention, right or wrong. So I give him credit for that. He's kind of just gone under the radar and just played football, which is, you know, kind of refreshing. And it does feel like he's more or less gotten better every week. You know, I like the plan that they've had with Arthur Smith, especially against Cleveland and that pass rush with Myles Garrett. For him to get the ball out of his hands quickly, I thought was what they should do. You know, he's not, even though I will say this, the one throw to Metcalf, the one throw to to Connor Hayward for the touchdown, he did show some flashes of Aaron Rodgers, you know, brilliance or vintage Aaron Rodgers, if you will. I do think he's at the stage, Chris, where he really can and should beat defense with his brain. He's exceptionally smart. He always has been. You know, he doesn't need to extend plays and make the spectacular anymore. He should be at the, you know, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, human computer stage of his career, where he's just kind of getting the ball out quickly because they do have a lot of guys, you know, whether it's Jaylen Warren or any of the tight ends, or DK Metcalf, you know, they do have enough weapons that it's helpful if he gets the ball out quick. And them obviously still having a young offensive line and certainly the ups and downs of Broderick Jones at left tackle. You know, the faster he does get the ball out, the better off it is for the Steelers' offensive line as well. So I think that they have found the formula to have success this year.
I think there's certainly signs that they have found it and are continuing to find other ways to win with it. Ross, as a local person who just observed Aaron Rodgers from afar before this year, I was concerned. I was like, man, I do not want to have to watch the Pat McAfee show every day to see if this guy's on it. Man, is he gonna be a jerk? But I gotta say, interacting with him, he's been very respectful to us as journalists. He's not been snarky. In the times that he is, it's kind of like in an obviously funny way where he's not putting down. He has fit in so well, and the team loves him. There's no division. There's no questioning of Mike Tomlin. You remember last year he kind of scowled at Robert Saleh on the sideline one time. Those two guys fit each other like a glove, Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers, and the team has just accepted him. He's accepted the team. That chemistry has been remarkable in my opinion, and that's played into their success. Right now, he averages 2 touchdowns a game, in the NFL. That's tied with guys like Baker Mayfield and Matt Stafford to start out the season. So pretty good stuff there. You mentioned Broderick Jones. The Steelers' offensive line started off shaky. Aaron Rodgers was getting sacked a lot. In his first 2 games, he got sacked 7 times. But his last 3 games, he's only been sacked twice, and that includes Sunday's game against the Browns, where Myles Garrett had just 2 assisted tackles, only 3 pressures, no quarterback hits. Aaron Rodgers was not sacked by the Browns. He was only hit 3 times, whereas he is playing a big part in that. He's getting the ball out fast, and they acknowledge that's a big part of their game plan, especially when you play Myles Garrett. But this Steelers offensive line also has now been able to get the ball going on the ground a little bit more in the last 2 games against the Vikings and the Browns. Should the Steelers start to be excited about a young offensive line with 3 guys in their second years in McCormick and Fautanu and Frazier, and then a third-year guy, Broderick Jones, making his first real year starting at left tackle and seeing this kind of progress early?
The answer is yes. By the way, before I forget, I like that they had the plan to attack Tyson Campbell too.
Mm-hmm.
The Browns just get a new corner via trade. I think he had gotten there or started practicing Thursday. You bet your butt you attack that guy. Because even if he's a talented guy, first of all, he's not that good. Otherwise, Jacksonville wouldn't have traded him in the first place. Secondly, his brain was spinning, right, with new calls and new teammates. And so that's definitely the guy you want to attack. And the Steelers did it very successfully. But I love what they're building with the offensive line. Fautanu was my favorite O-lineman coming out a couple of years ago. It was a shame that he had that injury last year, but I love the way he plays. So athletic. I mean, he was at Washington slicing and dicing dudes. I loved it. Frazier is like right out of central casting for a Steelers center. It's unbelievable. I feel like the Steelers always have a center like him. I feel like he's the guy in any movie about a Steelers offensive line. I mean, he is perfect. The wrestler, West Virginia, the whole deal. And then McCormick has obviously been a pleasant surprise. What Seumalo is at left guard. I think he kind of gives him that steady presence, the Super Bowl winner, all those type of things. And hopefully he can continue to bring Broderick Jones along. A lot of people really liked Jones coming out of Georgia. He obviously has the physical ability, has not been able to put it all together in the NFL. There are instances, though, where it takes a guy until year 3, until they really can kind of settle in and get comfortable and play to their physical ability. But what I like about their O-line is they're getting after people. McCormick, Fautanu, you look at them at the end of plays and down the field. And, that's one of the reasons why you like having young players if you can, because they're doing some of those things that you don't see from older guys a lot of times.
I agree. It's been really cool to see that. And hey, high praises from a former NFL offensive lineman with the experience that you have and the guy that studies football like nobody else. So I think that says a lot for their progress that you're seeing that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask Ross about what he sees developing in the AFC North with the Steelers atop it at 4-1 going into this week. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Before we continue our show here, we got to remind you this show is also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call them at 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. That's Goldberg, Persky, and White. So also being brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel's odds for the upcoming Steelers Thursday night football game against the Bengals have the Steelers at 5.5-point favorites, with the money line for the Steelers at -280, the Bengals money line at +230, the over-under set at 41.5 points. Now we continue our conversation with Ross Tucker here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter here with Ross Tucker. Ross, let's talk about this AFC North situation. I got to admit, I did not see the Ravens. Granted, no one can predict injuries, but 1-5 to start the season. There's a lot of people saying the Steelers have to win the division now, and they're 4-1, sitting atop the division. The Bengals are 2-4. Joe Flacco's their quarterback now. The Browns are 1-5, but the Ravens sitting there at 1-5 right now. If the Steelers can do something they have not done in the history of Thursday Night Football, which is to go on the road and beat a division opponent in their house on Thursday Night Football, they are like 0-7 all time, so they've done that since 2006. But if they can beat the Bengals, they'll be 5-1, giving them a 4-game lead over the Ravens. Some people in Pittsburgh feel like that's enough that you can call a division. But me, man, I see if the Ravens get healthy, they could still be a dangerous team.
Well, so there's a bunch of stuff there, Chris. Number one, that's a wild stat about the Steelers on Thursday night. You know, I didn't get there yet in my prep, but I'm going to be using that one. I can guarantee you. So thank you for helping with my prep and research for the game. That's a wild stat. And I will say, you know, that second half for the Bengals against the Packers, Joe Flacco started to settle in. Joe Flacco was playing pretty well. And I think he realized, hey, just throw the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Give those guys a chance, and they can make plays for you. So that's why the Bengals brought Flacco in, because he gives them a puncher's chance. As for the Steelers, you know, I've been saying the same thing, and I still believe this as relates to the Steelers and the Ravens, which is I still think the Ravens are just that talented. And I know they had some disappointing losses, and then the injury, you know, they never should have lost that Bills game in the opener.
Agreed.
But even at 1-5, now they have the bye. I think they'll get Lamar Jackson back when they come back. It feels to me like these are a couple of teams that will be in the 9-11 win range. I think the Ravens probably more like 9 or 10. Maybe the Steelers can get to 11, but I am kind of with you, Chris. I think it's going to be a dogfight until the very end in that division. I think that the Ravens are going to get a huge boost when Lamar Jackson comes back, because it's not just him. It's Roquan Smith defensively as well. They need a hard reset after these injuries, after the bye week. But I think the Ravens are getting ready to go on a run. And like I said, even though they're 1-5 right now, I think they finish up somewhere between 9-8 and 11-6. And that's still where I think the Steelers probably will end up, although the Steelers might surprise me. You know, those two meetings head to head are going to go a long way. Those Steelers, Ravens, I mean, even if the Steelers can just get one of them right when they play the Ravens, that will be absolutely gigantic. And also, it's a big reason, Chris, why I don't know if we, you know, and I know I teamed up with these guys. It's a big reason why I'm like obsessed with futurefans.com right now. Yeah. Because I don't know what it's like. I don't know if you have kids or if it's like this.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, dude, I'm just telling you, wait till you have them. Everybody listening or watching knows this. It is hard to get your kids to sit there and watch the whole game with you. Now, I grew up in Eastern PA, Chris. So I grew up in Reading, like a diehard Eagles fan. My dad and I, after church, you know, we would race home to watch NFL Today, Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek Snyder, and then watch the Eagles, whether it was Buddy Ryan or Randall Cunningham, you know, like all that. Man, I've tried with my kids. It is hard to get them. They want to be on their iPads. They want to be doing other things. So especially when the Steelers have a chance to win the division, get a home playoff game, now is the time for everybody listening or watching to go to futurefans.com, because these guys cracked the code. It's actually ironic that we're talking about it now, Chris, because these guys are Bengals fans. And I met them at the Super Bowl a couple years ago. They started this business to try to get young people to understand football and want to watch it, you know, ages 3 to 11, let's call it, certainly 4 to 10, because when the Bengals went on that Super Bowl run with Burrow a few years ago, they couldn't get their kids to sit and watch, and their kids were like, Dad, I'll watch it next year. Like, no, we're Bengals fans. We're in the AFC Championship game. We're in the Super Bowl. You got to sit down and watch it. So I encourage everybody, go check out futurefans.com. These guys cracked the code. It'll be like you're giving your kid a gift, but the truth is it's really a gift to yourself if it works like it does for so many. And they actually sit there and watch every Steelers game with you, like you did, like you did with your dad when you were growing up.
Absolutely. Listen, I had to sit there and watch it because my dad wouldn't let me get away with it. My dad was a football coach. He said, you're going to sit there and you're going to like it. But I learned to love it. I turned out and I liked football. But you go to futurefans.com right now. You can see they have great options for ages 4 to 8, young kids that want to learn the game. Or if you want to teach your kids the game so that they can follow along with you. And hey, Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburghers, football is bred into our society here in Western PA.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you this too. How are people feeling about? I saw a lot of people not happy with the field at Acrisure Stadium after Boswell fell. And I posted something on social media about it at Ross Tucker NFL. See, I don't really care about Pitt, but I love that the Rooneys let them have the Whippeal championship games there. Like as a Pennsylvania guy, high school football aficionado, I did the state championship games for years, including a bunch of Whippeal teams. It means a lot to me that the Rooneys let them do it, but I know that there's been a lot of talk about that this week.
There's a lot of concern. I mean, they were resodding the field as soon as the game was over. You saw them start to tear up the grass at the stadium. But there's been concerns. The Whippeal Championships, they don't come for another month or so, here in Pittsburgh. But there's certainly a concern for when they saw that Chris Boswell was not happy with it after the game. Aaron Rodgers made it vocalized that he wasn't happy with that situation. And that's something that the Steelers have to work out. Pitt football, they play there as well. They didn't play there this week, but maybe the Steelers need to pick up their groundskeeping efforts there. There's certainly been talks about the Steelers needing to invest more in that.
You know what's interesting about that, Chris? I'm not saying this is what the Steelers are doing, but when I played in New England in 2005, we practiced on the game field, which was grass, every day. And it was horrendous. Jeez. It was worse than the Steelers field is right now. And guess why we did it? Belichick thought it was a competitive advantage. Belichick wanted us to do it because we'd play the Dolphins or these guys. They'd come out and they'd have all kinds of cleats and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Look, we knew right. What it was like. We had been there all week practicing on it intentionally. I think at some point, I might be making this up. I think at some point, the head of the grounds crew for Gillette Stadium quit because he would get so much negativity. And he's like, Belichick won't let me do anything with it. Belichick told me I'm not allowed to make it better.
That's very positive what's going on in Pittsburgh. They're certainly trying, but that can be a competitive advantage. For years, it was a competitive advantage knowing you couldn't kick in Heinz Field, now Acrisure Stadium, with the wind and how it goes there, so they knew which side to go at the right times of the day. There's certainly advantages there. That's a good point by you, and they are resodding the field, but we'll see if that holds up when things come back. He's Ross Tucker. Ross, thanks so much for joining us here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Chris, it is my pleasure. Great to talk with you, man. As I said, I'm not only a huge fan of Pittsburgh, the city, but the people, the importance that they place on football is amazing. I love the Whippeal games out there. I love high school football. And I love how much they love about the Steelers. The best thing is probably just follow me on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. And then I've got the podcast network. You can follow at Ross Tucker Pod because college draft podcast, we're talking betting on college football. The Even Money betting podcast is a very popular NFL betting podcast. And then 6 days a week, I do the Ross Tucker Football podcast to make sure everybody is up to date. Everything going on in the NFL in 28 minutes or less. So it's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast Network. And then follow me at Ross Tucker NFL.
Absolutely. You do all that and you still had time to join us. We thank you, Ross, for joining us here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thanks for tuning into this edition of the North Shore Drive podcast and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We thank Ross Tucker for coming on with us. We had a great time talking with him. Be sure to stay tuned for all of our coverage this week. We have been at the Steelers facility all week long. And of course, we will be in Cincinnati covering Steelers, Bengals, Thursday night football, giving you our thoughts then and, of course, after the game. Subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all the daily content from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. See you soon here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.